thank you all for joining us today. So we are going to be talking about new biz and just how it's changed. And I've been in conversations with Katie and Jess about new business, and wanted to get their perspective on sort of how it's changed and what the market's like today, and what's different about how our approaches are sort of needing to adapt. We're seeing lots of changes from sort of how buyers are holding on to more power, tighter budgets, longer sales cycles, the role of tech and data in the whole sales process. So lots of things going on to affect us. Yeah, we've got Katie Grosvenor, who's Chief Engagement and Growth Officer at Group M, and Jessica Gibb, who is the CMO of St. Luke's. So welcome, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome. Katie, do you want to just give us a bit about your background?
Sure. So my current role is Chief Engagement and Growth Officer at Group M. I've been here about 2 years, but I'm probably what you call a boomerang, in as much as I also started my career within our network. Like lots of people, I kind of fell into media and specifically marketing and new business. We've talked about this before. I was given a £5 by a recruiter, and they sent me in the direction of Mediacom to work for Karen Blackett, and I was there for the next 13 years, which was brilliant, and then moved to a slightly different type of new business role in a tech company for 4.5 years, which was super interesting and gave me a bit of a different perspective from being in an agency. And then, like I say, 2 years ago, returned to the fold. And thank you for having me today.
No, cool. No, we're looking forward to unpacking all of that and what you've learned. Hopefully, some things along the way. And Jess, do you want to go next?
Hello there. Hello. So I'm Jess Gibb, and I'm the Chief Marketing Officer over at St. Luke's. I absolutely fell into this business, and absolutely delighted that I did. I ended up going to, we talked about this, a recruiter with a slightly dodgy sounding name in Soho. And it recruited for media and advertising agencies and all sorts. And I got my first job as PA to the marketing director at Leo Burnett. Couldn't believe my luck. And I am a new business careerist. I had a little sojourn off into being a headhunter, because it's quite, I think those skills are quite transferable, and have come back to St. Luke's. So I've worked at large agencies like Leo Burnett's and EuroCG at Gosper, which is, I think, is now Havas. If you can look at the line of it. I went over to work at 180 in Amsterdam, but I've as I said, did a bit of headhunting and then came back to St. Luke's about 10 years ago. I've always worked on the creative side, and yeah, delighted to be here. Thanks for asking me.
Yeah, no, it's always exciting to have veterans and experienced new business people.
Veterans.
Terrible word. Sorry, don't hate me. Cool. So obviously, I guess to start off with, when I ask most people how they got into business development, most people will sort of tell me they fell into it, right? It was not purposeful. But then, given what you know now about BD and the way you talk about your roles, I think, do we think a career in business development should be more of a purposeful decision? And if so, how? I want to talk about how we can try and encourage it and encourage the next generation. Jess, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I think it's such, I think business development is such a wonderful role. But I would say that I think you're in the center of the agency, and it's a saying that new business is the lifeblood of an agency, and it is really, really true. It's a role that really directly affects the growth and the future of the agency. It really needs to be at the top table, and it really needs to be celebrated. We need to have brilliant people coming into this. So I think, yeah, and there needs to be investment in this role, by the way. It's quite easier to pull back, as soon as budgets get cut, but this is absolutely a role that needs to be running the whole time. And you have to have a really good working group of people that are PRing the agency, that are looking at new business, that are looking at business development. So I think it's crazy it's not being shouted about more. And it should be represented at board level, by the way, in every agency, I think, in every business. I'm actually part of the IPA New Business Group. And this is something that we talk about quite a lot, and it's one of the drives of the agencies to make it a more acknowledged role. So we're doing that at a lower level by doing mentoring, lots of availability to mentoring to get the younger people in. But we're also looking at we've run a MIPA course that is aimed at business directors and account director level or managing director level, and it's a 10-week course that people can do, and we get brilliant people from around the industry, and you get a qualification, IPA qualification at the end of it. So it's really about recognizing that this is, should have its own qualification because it is so important. I think it is becoming more recognized. I think Campaign have finally in their book of lists for the last 2 years have had CMOs. We've got the Alpha Awards. Adam, obviously, you're doing these wonderful things. So I think we're getting there, but we need to do more.
Yeah, no, I'd agree. And the BD 100, things like that. So
BD 100, sorry, of course.
Katie, what are your thoughts about how BD is perceived?
Yeah, look, I think I'd echo that really. I'm really glad I fell into it because I think what it does is it gives you that very early stage of your career kind of access and an idea of what's going on in every part of the agency. I love the fact that there's now programs that are specifically looking at qualifications into this because it's a really, really important role. It does need a bit of a marketing job on it still, I think. I remember when I first started telling people, I first got into it, I work in new business, they kind of had this perception that I was on the phone and I was cold calling all day, and they didn't really understand the context of how new business and growth sits within in an agency and how important it is to the culture. And I think the other thing is we've got some really great examples in the industry of people who ran growth teams who have gone on to run agencies and holdcos, and they've gone on to have these big leadership careers, and we should probably do a bit more promotion of that as well.
Yeah, I think it's really exciting to sort of see leadership, when people have moved out of BD into leadership roles. I know you've kind of taken a few tangents in your career, but I'm the same. I think early on in my career I kind of felt I needed to get out of BD a little bit because it felt like, I don't know, I always wanted to be a creative or a strategist or something like that. And it wasn't until I think my mindset changed around business development and what it could be. And I think for me, it was about almost like the control I had over the brand, whereas if I wasn't, part of an account team or, you were a small part, a cog in that massive machine, whereas actually we are responsible for our brands and they are still quite big brands in their own right. So that felt quite exciting. And like you said, there's just so much learning that we get every single day. We're exposed to so many different industry sectors and challenges and things like that. And it's really exciting. But I don't think it was ever necessarily sold to me. I didn't have mentoring. There was no BD Matters or BD 100s or things like that growing up, and I think it is good. But I do think things still need to change in terms of the perception of what we do, from that sort of senior management level and sometimes around it being like, oh no, that's not my job. There's still a little bit of that goes on. So culturally, I think there's still a bit of work to do. So I guess thinking about your roles then, in your maybe early career, I think maybe you both did recruitment, or one of you definitely mentioned recruitment, but what sort of roles in your career has shaped the BD person you guys are today? Katie, do you want to tackle that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's probably less about the roles that I've done whilst I've been in advertising and more about the experiences. And like I said, you get to experience quite a lot, don't you, in a BD role of a business, and those experiences have just then kind of helped me with my leadership in BD. So when you see a badly managed room, it's really important to me now that we've got inclusive pitching, and the respect and fun are kind of fundamentals of any pitch, because we all know how much energy it takes. So those sorts of things. And then, how people have shown up. So I've obviously worked for some really good people. And when I joined, as was MediaCom, Karen Blackett was marketing director, and she was really sleeves rolled up, right? at the time we did a lot of things like hole punching and stapling, and she'd be in the production line, if you like, with me, as well as being the one that was in the room presenting and doing a lot of the work. So I think that removal of hierarchies in pitches has kind of made me very much a sleeves rolled up marketer.
Yeah, I love that. I like the sleeves rolled up, because we just muck in and do everything.
Yeah.
And there's a real sort of entrepreneurialism that's needed with this role. And yeah, I see that as well. It's like, because hierarchy can get in the way, I think, of pitches and decisions, but actually that's the last thing that's needed when you need to put the prospect to the client first, get out of each other's way.
Yeah, exactly.
And no one's too big or too small to do what needs doing. I've loved those kind of figures in my career as well.
They're really important. I think you've got to work. I think the thing that I've really learned, one constant that I've had in agencies, is working with inspirational leaders and creatives who really get new business. And who really, really make it a central part of the agency. So, you know, you've got to understand your agency's values and what it stands for, so you can go out there and you can represent it in the best way. And you've got to have a team that are working together who all understand what they're working towards. So there's no like kind of tension between the strategists and the creators and everything like that. You know, I think I learned pretty early on that we're nothing without a vision and a CEO kind of leading and backing. We can't sell it if we don't believe in it. And you're 100% right about the rolling up your sleeves and getting involved. You know, everyone at St Luke's, we're a proper all pitching agency. Everyone from top to bottom is totally involved at every single part of the process. There's no like, oh, this is my responsibility, this is what I'm doing, I'm the final decision maker, anything like that. We all kind of pull together. Everyone understands what their roles are. You know, everyone knows. And there are people that will lead on those certain roles, but everyone's pitching in it together. And that's huge. But yeah, I find it really, the whole vision has to come from the top, and then it kind of, that attitude, etc., just filters down now.
I saw that recently with the Gate Worldwide. I think is it Jamie Elliott who kind of came in there, and I thought just did a brilliant job. And we've done a few things with MSQ and just talking about like how they've brought that ethos together. And it is just one leader who gets it and drives that forward, and you see those agencies just kind of skyrocket, start winning pitches and everything.
It's because you believe in it. Everyone believes in it. You get behind it, and you're like, it's great. It's when the magic happens.
And if your CEO, if your CEO's done it as well, they understand every role that's in the pitch, so they can kind of put themselves in the shoes of the planner, the BD person, the strategist. They're really able to kind of empathize with all of it, which makes you just want to follow people, right? If they understand you and they understand you're part of it,
and if they champion you, you know they've got your backs, and then you just you'll do.
Yeah, and I've had chats with people before where the new business person has told me that the CEO's got their back, but when I ask questions, it doesn't seem like they fully have their back. You know what I mean? Like there's just something about maybe the investment into them or certain things about the role, and it feels like I think some people can feel they'll be supported, but not actually be supported. It's, you know, I mean, it's a hard one. I think you got to really look at your organization, and you know, think about how many of your decisions get truly listened to and they push through. And you know, when you ask for investment or you ask for more members of the team and all these kind of things, does it get listened to or does it get pushed back? And I think a lot of times, often they're like, yeah, got your back, but no, we're not investing, you know, in new business. You're like, well, it's sort of got my back, but you're asking me to work twice as hard and not giving me anything for it. And Katie, did you talk about, because I know you stepped out of agency world a little bit, and just talk about the benefits I think that brought to your career and shaped your thinking?
I think I mean, I kind of have spent a lot of time probably over the past 12 years sort of collecting skills, and I was really lucky when I moved off of new biz for a bit to work on a client, and that just sort of led me to the conversation of sort of responsible media. So I ended up working for an integral ad science tech company, and it was just really interesting to see the difference in how you have to get new business and how you have to pitch, and also just what it, now I've come back into an agency, I know what a good partner looks like, as in a good agency partner looks like. So it's sort of shaped my view of the world as well. I think it's, you know, they've got different processes in place in sales companies. You are looking at the figures every week. You have got your CRO kind of going through your product lines, and you sort of talking about those and doing it quarter by quarter. You know, I as a salesperson is focused, right? I think probably the same thing as is with agencies, maybe even more so, is the deal cycle's a bit longer. You know, you are going in, you're doing multiple presentations, and it doesn't necessarily materialize in a new piece of business very quickly. And I guess what it also gave me is, like, I'm now really conscious of how people respond. So, you know, we had an SDR in our team, and they were sort of prospecting, and the unfortunate thing of tech is that you can see how many people have clicked through your email and opened it up. And I always felt like it was probably quite demotivating for him because he wasn't getting a lot of response. So now I've come back in, like I said, I've come back in. I'm like, when I can, as much as I can, I'll make sure I'm responding, because I know the importance of that role and the importance of the energy that's required in that role.
Yeah, we've always got a bit of empathy for salespeople, like, you know, when they reach out. But yeah, I think it's just, yeah, it's interesting coming from the other side of things. And I think, you know, whether I think agencies could probably take more of that learning. You talk about CRO, you talk about the analysis of data, you know, and I don't think agencies take as rigorous an approach to business development, in my opinion. You know, like CRMs are kind of, it's an ad hoc thing when we can be bothered, and reporting is loose, I find, sometimes, and things like that. And I think if people went a bit harder on the numbers and very clear on sort of KPIs and lead sales funnels and things like that, I think we'd actually be more effective at business development, in my opinion. So obviously BD is pretty high pressured job. You know, we've often sort of been demanded to work long hours, and you know, I remember working sort of weekends on pitches and all sorts of things back in the day. I mean, how have you guys juggled those demands? And I believe you both have, you know, been working mothers, and you know, sort of thinking about how the work culture's either supported you or hindered you in that regard. Jess, do you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. Funny enough, just before I came on here, the school called with an, you know, initiative. It's that constant juggling. You're constantly going back. You've got your mum hat on all the time while you're at work. And everything's fine, by the way. It was just about a cricket match. But it's just that, you know, you've just got to constantly be on. It's a phone call that I always have to take because it's the school.
Yeah.
You know, when I started out in advertising, I genuinely didn't think that I would be in it for as long as I have been. I didn't see people that were like me really in advertising. I didn't really see working mums. I didn't think I'd be in it to this ripe old age, but I think stuff has really changed significantly over the last 10, if not 5 years. I think what you've got to do is find a company that mirrors your values and respects individual needs. And once you're in there, you can kind of create a space where you can kind of make your own working patterns. You know, I figured out pretty quickly that what I needed to, as a working mother, was to pick my children up from school 2 days per week. And I talked to my CEO about that and explained why and how it would help me and why it was important to me. And so for the last 10 years, I've been actually working 4 days a week, and I've been doing a day a week from home. I was an early adopter, a trailblazer of this working from home thing. And I set up structures within my team that the freedom I was being given wasn't impacting on everyone else. And I think if you can have a really honest, open conversation about these things and given the space to make stuff work, you can make it work. And it can mean that people with different need states, and it's not just working mums, it's people who want to have dogs, or they might have other dependents, or they might want to live somewhere else, or they might have a side hustle, all of those things. So just find a company that mirrors your values and looks at the individual. And I think the pandemic has helped us. It was awful that we had the pandemic, but it really set us off on a different path of understanding that you don't need to be desk bound to be effective, and that you can work from home, and that, you know, you can yeah, you just have to take people's life into consideration. I think as well, we've leveled the playing field. I know that we certainly have brought in quite a few benefits to working mums and dads to try and get them back into, you know, get back into work, because the cost of childcare has been a real, you know, a real stumbling block for parents as well. So we've got we talked to the agency. We're asking people about what was concerning them. And one of the things that came up was returning to work after having kids. So we put in a £500 a month childcare benefit to help people pay for nurseries for the first 3 years until they get help from the government. That has been absolutely huge, and it's had a really positive impact in the agency. And then there's also softer benefits, that we have bath time policies, which just sounds a bit flim-flammy, but people can leave at 5 o'clock 2 days a week, and they know that they can leave and they can go and pick up their children, and it's kind of no questions asked, which I think people kind of need, that empowering as well. So does that answer the question?
Yeah, I mean, that sounds great. Some really interesting initiatives that I think lots of companies could learn from. And I know, I think hopefully that is becoming more the norm. I know, like, you know, my wife works for a company where that is not the case, and it's quite different, and it's quite old school, shall we say? And I just think, you know, it's long past that, but I think it's, you know, we need to look at how we can be supporting people, and not, and even if they are doing it, not making people feel guilty, you know, as well as doing it, because there's one thing allowing you to do it, but then if it's always sort of, you know, held against you or thrown back in your face a little bit,
this is why you need representation on the board. You know,
Yeah.
you need people that are going to go, oh, okay, what are the touch points? We have an anonymous survey that we send around every 6 months and give people space to talk about what is concerning them, what they'd like to see, without actually having to put their name to it and go, oh, this is me. Because some people just don't have that confidence and don't think they're at a stage where they can demand these things or ask for these things. And that has become a really good way for us to temperature check and look. There's patterns that come out about things that are concerning people, be that financial or, you know, about returning to work, etc.
Yeah, Katie, so what about yourself in terms of juggling demands and the pressures of BD that we know are there?
I mean, look, my situation is slightly different. So I do have 2 children, but they're my stepchildren, so they have 4 parents to do the juggle. So it's slightly kind of less worrying about the school giving me a call about cricket or something. But I think what kids did, what having the kids in my life did do is kind of make me create boundaries, actually, that I probably didn't put in place before. But to the point about leadership, now I've got those boundaries, I'm demonstrating that I put them in place. And so hopefully for the leaders coming up through the business as well, they'll see that it's cool to be open about what you're putting in place. And I think to that point about COVID, right, we very quickly adapted to having tools and systems in place that allowed us to be both productive when we're kind of working solo, but also productive and inclusive when we were working sort of all on the phone together, on the computer together. So now we've got that. I think people are much more conscious of, we can still get things done. We just need to learn how we keep the energy in a virtual room. I will say there's when it comes back to the pitching, though, and maybe this is just me, and because I love this bit, those last few days when you're all in a room together, physically in a room together, with that energy, there's sort of nothing like it. So even if you kind of do the rest of it in this sort of flexible world that enables people to have that balance. And by the way, I love the bath time hours. I've written that down. So I'm totally going in. I love it. I think it has become more flexible, and just generally because we're thinking in a more inclusive way as an industry about, people's needs and what they're required to do brilliant work. it's not like, oh, I've got to go and do this now. I've got to leave early because I've got to go to the doctors, or I've got to go. People are like, yeah, cool. You've got to get this sort of blend that's right for you.
Yeah, and this also creates a focus on the outcomes of the work and the quality rather than the time you're doing those and sort of things that are kind of less meaningful, but you're still achieving the same results, if not more, and you're happier. It creates a nice environment. Okay, well, let's get on to pitches. We do have one question. So I'll ask this first because I think it's fair to Sarah. And she's asked about talking about pitching. I don't know if you guys have read the Win Without Pitching manifesto by Blair Enns, but she wanted to get your view on it. Are you guys familiar with it? If not, then you can't really answer the question.
I haven't read it. I think I know the theory of it, and correct me if I'm wrong, Sarah, that's about obviously pitching and winning the client without having to actually go to pitch, right? Am I?
Yeah, the premise is ultimately about building relationships and creating a winning environment without actually having to competitively pitch because you're already there. You know what I mean? You've already blindsided your competition and come in and created that scenario to win that client.
I mean, I think that's probably the best type of pitching, right? Actually, I think
it's definitely the best.
if you can build those relationships, well, first of all, like if you're retaining a client, if you've got that strong relationship, and any kind of closed pitch that you have to do is actually just a joy and a case of going through the contract and not having to keep people in a room. That's wonderful. But I mean, massive pat on the back to anybody who can win a brand new client through that soft prospecting or networking approach, that the brand has kind of built this picture of you already before having to go to an open pitch. They're like, actually, I think those guys are really cool. I'm going to go and work with them. So yeah, it would be maybe not as much fun on late night pizzas, but definitely time wise a lovely way.
But maybe the thinking as well a little bit is about, even if it's not about avoiding the pitch, it's still it's still an ambition, or an aspiration to win without pitching. You know what I mean? So by thinking about how do I win a client all the time, how do we proactively go to them, how do we win them and build a relationship and build a rapport long before that pitch exists, I suppose when it does come to pitching, you're going to be streaks ahead of your competition, aren't you? So it's maybe that thinking as well.
And when you're when you have quite a focused prospecting list anyway, or people you're like, that brand's really cool, we'd really love to work with them, you would tend to have that sort of, well, how are we going to win session anyway, that you would have if it was a kind of a standard pitch. So, and in those how we'll win is actually where you generate that ambition to get the clients like, okay, these are really interesting, let's go off and do this. So you're still able to, even without the pitch, generate that collective ambition to work on the brand, I think.
Cool. So Jess, tell me about a new business pitch, or maybe like a team that you've worked on. Like, what's the best pitch or best scenario?
Oh, I love pitching so much. And I really do. I think, there's just nothing quite like a really, really good pitch, but it is the best in times and the worst of times, so, if it goes really well, it's the best, obviously. But I've been at St Luke's the last 10 years, and I think obviously this is the best team that I've worked with. We are all, the management team has been here since I've been here. So there's been, very little churn at the top, and we are all totally invested in a team as working new business. So everyone is 100% involved from the get-go, but we've got a really good process that means that we get to pitch idea really quickly and everyone does it together, so it kind of cuts out the tensions that are there. But my favorite pitch that we've done recently was for Tyrrell's. I don't know if people know Chris Brand Tyrrell's. We pitched with an idea that was Pathé. It's in the Pathé news world, so it's all based in the 1940s. So we turned the agency back to the 1940s. We dressed up, we had hair and makeup in. It's amazing how much a professional hair and makeup person can change how you look. It was wonderful. All of the screens in the reception were just playing black and white, our work in black and white, black and white things over it. We had typewriters there. We called each other Mrs. Gibb, etc., rather than using first names. The clients came in and they just saw the world that they were buying into, and they loved our passion and our enthusiasm, and we really demonstrated to them right there and then that we wanted this so much, and just gave an insight into what it would be like working with us. We also had a dressing up box for them, and they dug in and got stuck in straight away. So I think that, it's 4 years on, and they still talk about it. At the time, they just knew that we were totally the right partners for them. And we loved it. We still use it as an agency picture. But pitch theatre doesn't always work, but I think this works because it was authentic and it showed its passion. And there is such a fine line. I've been involved in stuff that hasn't worked as well, and it's yeah. I don't think I'll name and shame myself at the moment.
No, don't need to. You've done a wonderful job, but it's great because obviously I don't work in agencies like you do anymore. So it's been a long while since I've done any sort of pitch theatre like that. And I did want to come on to talk about that a little bit, and investment into pitches and how it's changed. But Katie, do you want to tell us maybe a story that you're proud of, or something that's the best pitch or team?
The pitch feeling that all pitches that you win are wonderful, and all pitches that you do, you learn from anyway. The feeling that I got the first time when I was at MediaCom, we won Tesco. They ran a really good, quite short process. It was really well managed, and it was so exciting. Like, everybody wanted to win that. And then when we did, like, even now, however many years on, I think that evokes the emotion in me. And actually, because of how it was run, it wasn't, you sort of didn't put a lot of theatre into it. Obviously, you put a lot of energy and a lot of work into it, and it wasn't in our premises, it was somewhere else. So you kind of don't have that ability to do the theatre. All my favourite pitches, though, are the ones where there's been few people sat in a room plotting and planning and having those sort of aha moments together, because I actually think that's where you build some of your best kind of friends, if you like, within the industry. An interesting pitch for me was the first time I did a sales side pitch, and we were renewing a deal with the brand. And I think what was interesting for me was I was able to apply the techniques from agency pitching into that type of pitch, and really sort of use a lot of storytelling, less sort of product focus throughout it, and really talk sort of client centric benefits. But look, going back to agency pitches, I love them, like Jess, I love them too. And I love the legendary stories that sort of pop up around them. Like, I'm sure your competitors will know about that pitch theatre and talk about it and be like, oh my God, did you hear what they do? And that certainly happened for me. I'd have people ring me up and go, I've just seen X brand going into X agency, and they've done this as theatre, and it's all outside. And someone actually did ring me up once and say that another agency had landed a helicopter on their building, which since, look, they were probably winding me up, right? But I did have to confirm with the MD over there. I was like, you didn't actually land a helicopter on the building, did you? Because it sounded absolutely ridiculous. But those stories kind of permeate and go out through the agencies, and I love them.
Yeah, it is fun. And I think I was interested in that pitch theatre and the investment. I remember pitching Coca-Cola and spending like 30 grand on vinyls alone just to cover walls. And it sounded like the Pathé Tyrrell's pitch was done a bit more tastefully than what I did. But is that still a thing? Like, what, in terms of the investment going into pitches, is it like, thinking about theatre, thinking about time and everything, how has that changed, do you think, over the last kind of 5 years or so?
I mean, I don't think there's any less investment in time.
No.
I still think the energy that everybody's putting in, the time they're spending together, and creation is equally as important. And because, like Jess said, we've got better at processes, we're able to use that time even better. I do think, though, if a client turns up in, if you think about the pressure on our clients' budgets now and the conversations they're having with their CFOs, they are literally thinking about how every pound is spent. So if they turn up in the agency now and they see it's gone really big, and, I've been guilty of going really big before, they are going to say, are you thinking about our pounds as much as we're thinking about our pounds, like, with the same care? So I think it's still got a place, but perhaps, like I say, I mean, some of the stories of what we've all come up with before, I'm not sure if people go that big anymore, and they're just probably a bit more conservative or clever in how they do theatre.
Yeah. I think I totally agree. I mean, I don't know if you remember the story of British Rail, when I think it was Saatchi's pitch to British Rail, and they kept when there was British Rail, and they kept the reception area was really dirty, had loads of rubbish in it, and they kept them waiting for half an hour because they wanted to give them an experience how their customers were experiencing the brand. I don't think you'd see that anymore. I don't think agencies would be that punchy, and I think probably the clients are left. I think we're all fighting for survives. Such a brilliant story. I hope it's true, that one.
I love it.
I've heard that so many times, but I've never heard anyone confirm whether it's true or not. So surely someone can find out.
We need to. It is Saatchi's, isn't it? I'm sure it was Saatchi. Yeah. But I think, we're all fighting over smaller and smaller prizes, and everyone's having to throw so much at it. But you've really got to, I think, you've got to read your client at the beginning and see what they're up for. I think some people see pitch theatre as being a wonderful expression of the agency's passion, and if it's done right, it is wonderful. But you can so easy, it is a fine line to walk. And yeah, I think you're 100% right. In this environment, you don't want to do anything that just feels, I don't know, just money wasting. Frivolous. Frivolous. Yeah.
There's a lot more digital options out there for us than there maybe were back in the day. I mean, Mark Gomes asked a question around AI, particularly around the pitch process. So it's quite specific. I don't know if are you using any AI or any sort of digital tools to make your processes more efficient?
The creatives all use it, 100% to do mock-ups. We use it for research. I mean, it's 100% a part of the process now. I think it's AI is just in our lives, isn't it? So there's mid-journeys absolutely is used all the time. Yes, I think research, writing.
Mock-ups is great, because I remember they sort of used to take ages of what this would look like. And I suppose when you're trying to put together visualizations and things quite quickly in a deck, then AI is probably perfect.
It just sort of frees it kind of frees up the time for the talented folk on the pitch to do the thinking, right? So if you can have something that helps you put together your RFI because it's sort of pulling in multiple data points, or helps you run the process a bit smoother, then all of those people you've got on the pitch, you've got their time to be creative thinkers, and that's a massive benefit for our clients who are going to see the end product.
And do you find it easy to get everyone involved on a pitch? I always have a classic question, whose responsibility is new business in the agencies? What's it been like, getting people onto a pitch, or some of the roles and responsibilities beyond the pitch, marketing, new biz? What's that like? Is it still like pulling teeth like it was, or has it got any easier?
We're quite a small agency. There's everyone here, I think, as I've mentioned, is totally invested in new business. But I think to get people involved in new business, people have to understand why they're doing it, what is the benefit, and what is their role in it. So we have a lot of communication in the agency backwards and forwards. We have 2 back to school meetings a year, one in February, one in September, where we're talking about what the vision and the goals of the agency are. So that's setting out at the beginning, and then it's in September, it's about what are we achieving and what's coming next, so that people really understand what we're trying to achieve as an agency, new growth, new skills, etc., and opportunities. And then we have weekly meetups, the whole agency. On Thursday we have drinks and a couple of and some food together. We celebrate the highs and the lows, but always talk about new business. And I think when people understand their role, why they're being asked to do it, the role they can play, and the benefits, it gets really, really exciting. And if you say communication, but also make it fun. If everyone knows that they're tipping up and it's just going to be a great experience. Yes, of course, it's going to be tense. Yes, there might be late nights. Yes, it might be difficult and all of that. But ultimately, it's going to be a wonderful bonding experience that you come out of really proud of what you've done and what you've achieved. There's nothing better, but people have to feel supported and understand why, I think.
Definitely. And it comes back to that leadership point, doesn't it? So Jeremy is asking about lead gen. And, you know, I know sort of people often say they don't like the cold outreach side of new business. And Katie, you said you had that experience working with like the SDRs. And I guess I've been interested both about how do you guys within your agencies or within some of the group agencies, Katie, that you have, like, how do you approach lead gen? And then I want to sort of talk about maybe how we can make prospecting more interesting for people.
Well, look, I think like the example I used, when you have kind of prospecting in this cold calling way, or you're using SDRs, which are, you know, sales development reps, for anybody that doesn't use that acronym. I think for the person who's doing it, it can be quite demotivating, and then it becomes quite generic because you're just like getting out those emails. I think the best prospecting is about relationship building and trying to be where those people you want to work with are. I also think it needs to be considered in terms of don't have a prospect list that's 100 clients long, because you're not going to do it well. Making it bespoke, putting in the effort, researching who you want to talk to. That's going to make you as an agency or as a BD person more interested and invested in that brand anyway, because you're like, oh wow, these are really cool, like they do this and that's similar to us, and you can find these connections. But it's also because you've put in that work, for whoever you're prospecting, they're going to pick it up and go, actually, this is useful for me and this is interesting and I think I could work with those people.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think, you know, that prospecting thing, we do it as a year. We look at it as a year and treat it like a campaign. And so we're looking at 4 different sectors, and then I put teams on those 4 different sectors. And so you're belonging to a group that's trying to achieve something. And so it means that you're getting really good content out there that's really targeted and focused, and it's going to be useful. So you can turn it into think pieces, or you can email people to, and LinkedIn is your friend as well. You know, people, we need to use LinkedIn for it. You can send direct targeted newsletters, you can send it just to FMCG groups or whoever you're looking at. So I think, yeah, just spread the load, make it bite size, get everyone involved. Again, give everyone the reason why you're doing it. And people who've got experience perhaps in those sectors, it's an area of interest for them. They're much more likely to go, brilliant, okay, I know so-and-so. And also get people to check their LinkedIn. Oh my God, the amount of gold that we've unearthed, and people going, oh, I had no idea that my uncle is now a VP at so-and-so. It's just extraordinary. It's a gold mine, that place. It really is.
Yeah, well, I love the both ways you're thinking about it. I think there's a sort of tailored approach to what you were saying, Katie, and certainly about relationship building. I mean, it takes time. I think sometimes the expectation, I think that's where you need to manage that, is that you're not going to see results overnight. It's about building those relationships over time and getting to know those businesses. But Jess, you talk about, like, I think a multi-pronged attack and how you get the whole agency behind you. And I think that's always been one of the big issues with BD, is that it's not my responsibility. There's somebody out there who's doing that, knocking on the doors, making the calls and pushing it out there. But I really like the idea of like dividing teams, dividing and conquering, and getting all the thinking behind it, looking at their networks and how do we all come together. I think my role, whenever I was successful in business development, I actually saw myself as this kind of cog behind the clock face that was just making everything tick. And actually I was just an orchestrator in new business of orchestrating that new business culture. Whereas a lot of people and maybe leadership puts that on them, they see themselves as quite siloed. They feel a bit of a lone wolf in what they're doing. And that's where I think it can get, well, very demotivating, like you said, Katie, and just quite demoralizing. I think it
And
needs
it just doesn't work as well, does it? You just need to be, I think, a really good BD is in the middle of the agency, and you are motivating, cajoling, begging, borrowing, stealing, persuading, blackmailing if it need to. But yeah, just everything to kind of just get everyone on board and make everyone feel and understand why they're doing it and the role and how important they are as well. People love being part of a thing. They really do.
And also ensuring that leadership has a part to play in prospecting as well. Yeah. And that's what I think, that we've always done is prospecting doesn't just sit with the BD team. Everybody knows that they have got a part to play in making sure that they are either, like you say, leveraging their network or reaching out directly, or picking up on stories that could be useful and that we've got a point of view on. It's not just left with kind of your new business crew.
And
the power of people. Sorry.
No, go. I was just going to say it comes down to cultural transformation for me. I just literally had a call with a client and the subdivision of that client, and they were like, "Oh, yeah, I could do this. I could block out time. That's my." They wasn't really. It almost like I had to give them responsibility to say, "Yeah, you're a part of this thing too. Like help us, help you. Get on board." People don't just realize it. Go on, sorry, Jess.
No, I was just talking about the power of sharing. When you do have brilliant content and you put it on LinkedIn, ask your people to share it to their network as well. We've had so many new business approaches because of that indirect of people just watching what we're doing and stumbling across something that really resonated with them that we were doing. People buy people.
Yeah,
really.
Yeah. Zara in our team's a great advocate of that. She's always sort of saying, make sure you're sharing it, sharing all the content, other people share it.
People prefer it from our CEO or CCO to
Yeah.
see it from them rather than the St. Luke's brand. They absolutely do, and they engage much more.
So my other question was then about like the modern way of sort of getting in front of clients, because ultimately there's a lot of agencies out there. LinkedIn is a great tool, but it's also everyone's got access to it. So I feel like it's harder. It's been harder and harder to get cut through in my eyes. Harder to content doesn't stand out as much, or just trying to think about like what are the maybe things that you've done advertising wise, marketing wise, to get yourself seen and heard. Has that changed over the last few years, and what's working?
I mean, we've probably been, I guess, just more considered about what's useful to a client, right? In terms of, whether it's kind of marketing campaigns or prospecting, it's like really what is the benefit to the client? Why should our clients care about what we're putting out? I think a lot of the time, still with kind of getting that new business and getting in front of clients, it's about being in the right place at the right time with the right message, whether that's in person or kind of in this hybrid way. But ultimately it still comes down to doing brilliant work and making sure that's showing up somewhere in the industry.
Oh, did we just lose
or
Katie?
wherever, getting clients interested in thinking this and getting in front of them. I think actually just being where they are, because people win your business, right? It's people that win pitches. Still, that hasn't changed. We kind of talked about the things that have changed. What absolutely hasn't changed is that people buy people, and being in front of people, getting that energy from them is what will convert.
And just for Group M's sake, then, is that, are there stable parts of your kind of annual calendar that you do every year? Are there certain events that you do, certain events you sponsor? Like what, what's your kind of, what are the big hero moments, do you think?
Yeah, we have got tentpole events, owned events in terms of, at Group M, we've, and this is a new one at Group M, it's our Next M event that we do, but also all of the agencies have an annual tentpole that's created around their work and that's for their clients. And they're all quite different and distinctive, which is great, because I think when you have a few agencies, you need to make sure that distinction does exist, and very much so with ours it does, and that shows up in how they market themselves and their events. And then there are some that we come together as a group on. So Cannes is an example. We show up as one group at Cannes. We don't have all of the agencies doing different things, because ultimately we're one group, and that's important to demonstrate to our clients. So we have, and especially as a group, so the agencies have always been very good at this, but really as a group, we're now starting to look at how we show up consistently, making sure it's not fractured, if you like, and making sure that I think that people know what we stand for.
Yeah, it's just harder as a group. You've always got that duality, haven't you, of kind of like different people, different messages going off in different directions. And so, Jessica, what about your kind of some of your marketing initiatives and what you're doing to kind of help St. Luke's stand out at the moment?
So as I said, we've got our 4 groups that do the kind of new business prospecting. But what we've been really looking at this year is getting people on platforms and finding their things that they're passionate about, and then finding the right platforms for them. So my chief creative officer does a column for MadFest where he can talk about all the creative stuff that he wants to. And it's brilliant. It's a really good forum that really makes him think, and it gives us great content that we can push out as well. People have started following him. We've got the planners that are doing a session about how to set the ideas that set the agenda in the market. That's a targeted newsletter that goes out. We've started a podcast. Look for a Jeremy Paxman style person in the organisation that really wants to do get people involved. Our podcast has just launched, and that's another stream of content that's going out. So we're doing lots of stuff that we're getting internal. Obviously, our work and all our PR is a separate thing. We're looking for the right platforms for people. We're looking at the interest that people have inside the agency that they can push out, and that's working really well for us at the moment. Engagement's really quite high, we're finding, because it's always great when you can track these things, and it's the good old newsletters we're doing as well across all platforms. People are still engaging with them. Does that answer?
Yeah, I think so. I think what's nice sometimes about it is like how you're, again, I think using individuals and embracing their passions.
Yeah.
And sometimes like I said, if you talk to someone about doing new business and they think, what, you're asking me to make a cold call, they're going to be like, absolutely not.
No.
If you turn into this person and be like, look, do you want to be the next Jeremy Paxton and actually just appear on this thing? They'll be like, I'd love to do that. And you're thinking, great, because that's what we need. So put people in the right positions, like an orchestrator, like at a staging kind of thing. You kind of get the best out of everyone, and it all does the job, right? Of what you're looking.
Absolutely. And it is turning up to the events. Like I was lucky enough to go to South by Southwest last year. We're doing Cannes this year. Going to Adweek, etc. It is about going. It's good old networking as well. As Katie said, it's quite a lot of luck. You can have a very good conversation with someone that you just happen to be in the right place at the right time, who's seen the right thing, etc. So yeah, don't underestimate the power of people.
Yeah,
as you said, we buy people.
Now, a lot of people have talked to me about networking, and events are sort of back better than ever. So I think a lot of people are enjoying that and getting out there more. Cool. So I think we'll wrap up shortly. If anyone's got any questions from the audience, jump in now. My last question to both of you is just, what is the best thing about your job? I guess if we're talking to somebody getting into BD or wanting to encourage like someone to go on that path, how would you sort of sell it to them? So, Katie, do you want to go first? What would you say the best thing is?
I think for someone like me, and I would hazard a guess that many new business and marketing career risks would stay the same is the variety. That's, nothing is the same for me ever. It's always working on something new, whether that's a marketing project or a brief. It's always working with new people. So you're so connected when you're doing a marketing or a growth role in an agency, because you just have to talk to everybody. And I love that. I love the fact that I can pick up the phone to someone and go, oh yeah, they know about this measurement thing, so I'll just give them a call. And it's that variety and that change that I still get a buzz out of.
Yeah, definitely don't get into this role if you don't like change. Because get the hell out of you. Jess, has that given you enough time to think about your favourite?
I completely echo everything that Katie just said. And I'm going to add that I'm really nosy. And I think if you're really nosy and you like being at the centre of the action, then this is absolutely for you.
Yeah.
Every day is so different. I know what's going on. I can help drive change as well. And I think this role really marries the business and the creativity with nosiness. So, yeah, I don't know why everyone doesn't want to do it, frankly. It's the best job in the business.
Well, they will after seeing this for sure. So it's going to change everyone's mind. But no, look, guys, thank you so much for joining me today. It was really great just to sort of reminisce, talk about new business, with two like-minded people. Thanks for being here, and we'll speak soon.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks
All right,
so much.
bye.
Thanks for having us.